The message arrived at a time when no one was listening. Far beyond busy trade routes and shining cities, a lonely human relay station floated in deep space. It was old, slow, and mostly forgotten. Its job was simple: catch weak signals, log them, and forward anything important to Central Command. Most days it heard nothing but cosmic noise. On that day it heard pain. Jonah Reeves sat alone in the control room, sipping cold coffee and watching dull green lights blink. He was not important. He was not famous. He was a human technician who had chosen quiet work far from Earth because silence was easier than crowds. Then the console flickered. At first, Jonah thought it was a glitch. The signal was broken, uneven, and unstable. It did not follow any known protocol, no greeting, no identification, just sound. A low, trembling sound. Jonah leaned closer. The automatic translator struggled, symbols flashing and failing. The audio sharpened for half a second, and Jonah felt his chest tighten. It sounded like crying. Not human crying, something deeper, slower, full of exhaustion and fear. "Station, please," the translator finally whispered. Jonah's hand froze above the controls. His training told him what to do next: flag the signal, forward it, wait for orders. Unknown species signals were dangerous. They could be traps, they could be weapons. But his eyes stayed on the screen. The image cleared suddenly. An alien female appeared, kneeling on a cracked metal floor. Her body was thin, her skin a dull blue-gray, dry and splitting in places. One arm held a small bundle close to her chest. The other arm shook as she struggled to stay upright. Her eyes were large, black, and filled with something Jonah had seen before. Desperation. She looked straight into the camera, as if she could see him through the void. "I have asked many worlds," the translator said slowly, words breaking apart. "They did not answer." Jonah swallowed hard. The small bundle moved. A child. The alien infant was wrapped in torn fabric. Its breathing was fast and weak, each breath a struggle. Faint light pulsed under its skin, flickering like a dying star. The mother lowered her head until her forehead touched the floor. "Please," she said, "my child is fatting." The signal cut for a moment, then returned weaker than before. Jonah's heart pounded. He opened the station log and sent the alert to command. His fingers moved fast, trained. Unknown alien distress signal. Mother and child. Life-threatening condition. The reply came quickly. "Signal unverified. Do not engage. Maintain observation only." Jonah stared at the message. Then he looked back at the screen. The mother was still there. She was humming now, a low, broken sound meant to comfort the child. Tears ran down her face and darkened the floor beneath her. "She is dying," the translator said quietly. Jonah stood up. He had followed rules all his life. Rules had kept him safe. Rules had also kept him distant. Watching now, he felt something inside him crack. He remembered his own childhood. A small room, a fever. His mother sitting beside his bed all night, holding his hand, whispering that he was not alone. Across the stars, another mother was doing the same thing. Jonah closed the command channel. He activated the microphone. "This is a human station," he said, his voice unsteady but clear. "I hear you." The alien mother froze. Slowly she lifted her head. Her eyes widened. Her grip on the child tightened, as if afraid this was a dream. "You answer?" she asked. "Yes," Jonah said. "You're not alone anymore." The signal strength dropped again, alarms warning of failure. The mother struggled to speak fast. "My ship is broken. My people left us. They said my child was not worth saving." Jonah felt anger rise in his chest, sharp and hot. "What is your location?" he asked. She sent the coordinates with shaking hands. As Jonah copied them, the image faded. The last thing he saw was the mother pressing her face against her child's head. The screen went dark. The control room fell silent. Jonah stood there for a long moment, staring at empty space. Then he turned toward the hangar where his small, worn ship waited. Rules echoed in his mind. So did her voice. He grabbed his jacket and walked fast. Somewhere in the dark, a child was dying. And a human had heard the call. Jonah did not pause. He could have waited for orders, for instructions, for someone to tell him it was too dangerous. But the image of the alien mother clutching her fragile child burned in his mind. He could not ignore it. The ship he piloted was small, old, patched together with parts scavenged from abandoned stations and derelict freighters. It was not meant for heroic journeys or impossible rescues. It was meant to survive, and somehow Jonah trusted it could carry him across the void. He loaded medical kits, nutrient injectors, water filters, and emergency power cells into the cabin. Every item reminded him of human ingenuity, makeshift solutions, human stubbornness, and a refusal to give up. He paused at the comm console. Messages from Central Command were still blinking red. Unauthorized departure, unknown species, possible threat, return immediately. He looked at the warning, then at the blank space outside his station window. Stars stretched endlessly, cold and indifferent. He whispered to himself, "They don't understand." Engines roared to life. The ship shuddered and shook as it lifted off the station. Jonah gripped the controls tightly, feeling the vibrations in his hands and chest. Every warning signal screamed at him to turn back, but he ignored them all. The child's life did not have a protocol. The mother's plea did not come with instructions. Only hope, only desperation. Hours turned into tense silence, broken by the hum of the engine and the occasional alert from the navigation system. Radiation storms scratched the hull. Meteoroid fragments danced dangerously close, threatening to tear the patched ship apart. Jonah maneuvered with skill born from years of fixing ships too old to be replaced, feeling every vibration as if it were a heartbeat. At one point, a storm knocked out the navigation computer entirely. Jonah's eyes scanned the stars, matching patterns with memory and instinct. He remembered star charts from old textbooks. He remembered his father's voice explaining constellations. One wrong move could send him into the abyss. Another wrong move could mean the child would not survive. Through the crackling communication channel, he tried again. "I am coming, hold on, I will not let go." The words sounded foolish even to him, but he knew that somewhere the mother heard them. Somewhere she needed to know that someone had not abandoned her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the ship's sensors detected the alien vessel. It was a wreck. The hull was torn, lights flickering, and parts of it drifting in the cold void. The ship was barely recognizable as a living space. Jonah swallowed hard. His chest felt tight. Fear gnawed at him. He docked carefully, maneuvering alongside the shattered alien craft. The airlock hissed as he opened it, and he floated into the damaged corridor. Broken panels and wires hung like wounded vines. The smell of burnt circuits and coolant filled the cabin. There she was, the mother. Her pale blue skin looked paler under the flickering emergency lights. The child in her arms was weaker than Jonah had imagined. Its glow was faint, like a tiny candle struggling against a storm. She looked up, eyes wide and filled with disbelief. "You came," she whispered, voice breaking. "I promised," Jonah said simply. "I am here." Her lips trembled. She lowered her child to the floor gently, shielding it with her body as if his presence alone could protect it. Jonah scanned the room with his portable device. Life signs were critical. Every breath the child took was a fight against death. The mother spoke, her voice shaking. I have no one. They said it was useless, that it would die." Jonah knelt beside the small bundle. Human medicine was not designed for alien physiology. Every injection, every nutrient, every adjustment he made was a guess guided by instinct, by hope, and by the determination not to let this life end in the cold darkness of space. The child's glow flickered with every effort. The mother's hands trembled, gripping his shoulders as though his human presence gave her strength. She whispered, "Do not fail us." Jonah did not answer. He could not. His mind was focused, hands moving with precision, heart pounding like a drum. Fear and resolve mingled together, a strange warmth in the void. Hours passed. The child's breaths came slower, steadier, and Jonah felt exhaustion crawl into his bones. Yet he could not stop. Not now. not when the hope of a universe rested in the fragile glow of a small life. Finally, he stepped back, his body trembling, sweat beading on his forehead. The mother looked at him, searching his face as if she could read his soul. Jonah met her gaze and nodded. "I'm not leaving," he said. She bowed her head, tears running freely now, a mixture of relief, fear, and disbelief. Jonah did not know what tomorrow would bring, but for this moment he had crossed the void. He had chosen to care. And sometimes that choice was the strongest power a human could wield. The corridor was silent except for the soft hum of Jonah's equipment. Broken wires swayed gently in the low gravity, and faint sparks danced along the edges of the walls. Every step he took felt heavy, as if the air itself weighed down on him. The mother knelt over her child, her long fingers trembling as she brushed back a stray lock of hair. Her eyes, wide and black, were pools of fear and hope. Jonah felt the weight of her gaze and realized she had given up on everyone else. Everyone had abandoned her. Only this human had come. He lowered his scanner to the child. The life signs were weaker than before. Organs were unstable, pulses irregular. The glow beneath its skin flickered like a candle about to die in the wind. Jonah adjusted his equipment carefully, his fingers steady despite the fear knotting his chest. "Tell me what to do," the mother whispered, voice barely audible. "Tell me, please." Jonah shook his head. "I don't know your biology," he admitted, "but I know pain, I know hope, and I know how to keep trying." She studied him as if trying to measure how much of her child's survival depended on this human. She nodded slowly, a gesture that spoke more than words: trust. Jonah began his work. Every injection, every nutrient transfer, every attempt to stabilize the child was a gamble. He drew on his knowledge of human medicine, adapting doses and techniques on instinct. He modified chemical balances, adjusted nutrient ratios, and monitored vitals with relentless focus. Every twitch, every flicker of light beneath the child's skin told him a story. The mother hummed softly, a low vibration meant to soothe, and Jonah realized she had been doing it all alone for days. She had been a shield, a warmth, a heartbeat in the cold expanse of space. Now he was part of that shield, part of that heartbeat. Hours passed. Time seemed meaningless in the empty vessel. Jonah's arms ached from holding equipment, his eyes burned from focus. The child's glow faded, then returned, flickering weaker each time. Jonah's heart raced. Every failure, every setback felt personal. Every small improvement brought relief and exhaustion in equal measure. At one point, the child let out a sharp, high-pitched cry. Jonah froze, letting instinct guide him. The mother immediately pressed herself closer, murmuring something in her language. Jonah could not understand the words, but he understood the feeling: fear, love, desperation. "I'm not giving up," Jonah said softly, more to himself than anyone else. "I won't let this end here." He connected another monitor, one that could feed stabilizing energy through a filtered plasma system. The process was dangerous, never tested on alien life, unproven, unpredictable. If he miscalculated, the child could die instantly. If he succeeded, there was a chance. A fragile, tiny chance. The mother watched him with wide eyes, her hands hovering over her child, ready to intervene. "If you fail, her voice cracked. "You won't let me fail," Jonah said. "Not alone, not ever." He activated the device. Energy flowed slowly, carefully through the modified conduits. The child's glow flickered violently, then steadied. Jonah's muscles tensed as he monitored vitals. The pulses were stronger, the breathing steadier. A small light returned to the child's eyes. The mother gasped, tears spilling freely. She reached for Jonah's hand, but he shook his head. "It's not done," he warned, "but it's alive." She pressed her forehead against her child, whispering words Jonah could not translate. Still, the feeling of relief, awe, and gratitude was universal. He could feel it in her heartbeat, in the trembling of her arms, in the warmth radiating from her body. Jonah leaned back, exhausted, sweat dripping from his brow. Every muscle in his body ached. His mind spun from the stress and intensity of hours spent on the edge of life and death. Yet when he looked at the child, steady now in the mother's arms, he felt a small victory. One life saved. One act of courage, simple but profound. The mother studied him again, eyes searching. She whispered almost in disbelief, Why did you come?" Jonah looked at the faint glow of the child, at the woman who had been alone in the void, and smiled faintly. "Because someone has to answer," he said, "and today that someone is me." Outside the ship, the stars stretched endlessly, indifferent and cold. But inside the vessel, light glowed in the darkest corners. A human had crossed the void, and hope had returned to a place where despair had reigned for too long. The mother hugged her child tighter, and Jonah finally allowed himself to rest against the wall, exhausted but satisfied. For now, life had been given another chance, and sometimes that was enough to change everything. Jonah sat back for only a moment before he realized something terrifying. The child's vitals were stabilizing, yes, but the underlying condition was still critical. The alien physiology was fragile, unlike anything human medicine had ever encountered. Every pulse, every breath, was a fragile thread holding life together. He scanned the child again, trying to find a solution. The medical supplies he had brought were designed for humans. Nothing here was guaranteed. Nothing here was safe. But Jonah's mind worked quickly, searching for patterns, connections, anything that could save this small life. The mother watched him closely. Her face was pale beneath the soft blue of her skin. Her large black eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and hope. She whispered something in her language, a string of words that made Jonah feel the weight of her desperation. "I cannot lose it, not now." Jonah understood. He could feel it, in the way her hands trembled and hovered over the child, in the way her whole body seemed to bend protectively around the tiny life. The solution came as a dangerous idea. Human blood carried adaptive cells, strong immune responses. Some cells could, in theory, integrate with alien physiology temporarily, repairing damage and stabilizing life functions. It had never been attempted. It might harm Jonah. It might fail entirely. It might even kill the child. Jonah looked at the mother. She shook her head slightly, reading his expression before he spoke. "I have no other choice," he said. "This may hurt, it may be dangerous, but I cannot leave it like this." The mother hesitated, then nodded. Her trust was absolute. She placed her child on a soft, padded area he had prepared and held the tiny hands gently. "Do what you must," she whispered. Jonah adjusted the equipment. Filters, stabilizers, nutrient channels, all modified on the spot to carry the human adaptive cells safely into alien physiology. His own blood was prepared, carefully drawn, and connected to the complex system he had built. Every measure he had taken before was nothing compared to this. This was a gamble of life and death, human and alien intertwined. When he initiated the transfer, pain shot through his body like fire. Numbness crept into his limbs, and his vision blurred. He could hear the mother crying softly, whispering words of encouragement in her strange language. Jonah focused on the readings, eyes flicking from vitals to energy flows, making adjustments instantly. The child's glow pulsed wildly. Jonah gritted his teeth as if the effort of will alone could make it survive. Every heartbeat in his chest echoed in the tiny vessel. Minutes stretched like hours. Jonah's body trembled. He felt weakness clawing at him from every angle, but he forced himself to continue, to hold the delicate balance between hope and fear. The mother's voice broke through his concentration. "You give yourself?" she asked, disbelief etched into every syllable. Jonah managed a small smile, even as pain made it hard to speak. "Humans do this," he whispered. "Sometimes we risk ourselves for others, for life." The child's glow steadied slowly. Breathing deepened. A faint smile formed on its tiny lips, or at least Jonah interpreted it that way. The crisis had passed, though the child was not yet fully safe. The glow now was steady, calm, a heartbeat finally synchronized with hope. Jonah collapsed against the floor, exhausted. Every muscle screamed, every breath burned. His vision swam with colors, shapes, and pain. Yet as he looked up, the mother was kneeling, tears streaming down her face, hands pressed over her child in relief, in gratitude, in awe. "You saved it," she whispered. I cannot believe." "You don't have to believe," Jonah said, voice weak. "Just live, both of you." For the first time since the mission began, silence fell over the vessel. Not the emptiness of space, but a calm, warm silence, full of relief, full of fragile triumph. Life had been preserved against impossible odds. Hope had returned to a place where despair had almost won. The mother hugged her child close, pressing her face against the tiny head. Jonah lay back, listening to their breathing, feeling the pulse of life around him. He realized something profoundly human. Courage was not in strength, but in choosing to act when fear threatened to paralyze you. And sometimes it meant risking everything for the chance of a single heartbeat. Outside, the stars continued their indifferent dance. But inside that broken alien ship, Jonah's choice had made the impossible real. One small life survived. One mother's desperate hope had been answered by a human who dared to cross reason itself. And somewhere deep in the vastness of the universe, that act of courage would echo, soft, quiet, but impossible to ignore. When Jonah finally allowed himself to rest, he felt the full weight of what he had done. His body ached in ways he had never imagined. Every limb trembled. Every breath felt heavy. Yet he also felt a strange warmth in his chest, a quiet satisfaction, the kind that only comes when one has faced impossible odds and chosen to act anyway. The mother stayed close to her child, wrapping her arms protectively around the small being. The child's glow was steady now, bright enough to illuminate the corners of the broken ship. Jonah watched, exhausted but alert, as life returned to a place that had seemed lost forever. The alien's gratitude was silent but piercing. Every glance, every tremble of her hands spoke volumes. Hours later, as Jonah regained some strength, the ship's sensors detected movement outside. At first, he thought it was debris drifting in space, but then he saw the shapes, tall figures, sleek and glowing, approaching in formation. Alien vessels, unfamiliar and massive, moved cautiously around the wreck. Weapons were visible, but they were not aimed aggressively. Jonah's heart raced. He had no idea what to expect. The mother stood protectively in front of her child, her posture straight and proud despite exhaustion. Her large black eyes met Jonah's briefly. They are coming," she said softly. "I do not know if they will forgive you." Jonah swallowed. "I did what I had to," he said. "No one else answered. I couldn't leave them." The ships docked with precision, silent and deliberate. Figures emerged from the airlocks. They were tall, like their mother, with pale blue skin and glowing eyes that shifted color with emotion. Weapons were lowered, but the tension in their movements made Jonah aware that he was a stranger in their eyes, possibly an intruder. The mother stepped forward. "This human," she said, her voice strong and commanding, "crossed the void to save life. He risked himself for my child. He gave himself." The lead alien tilted its head, studying Jonah intently. Its voice, transmitted through the translator, was calm but sharp. A human, alone, with no orders, chose action over protocol. Jonah nodded weakly. "Yes, I couldn't ignore them." There was silence. Then slowly the aliens lowered their weapons completely. Some of them made a sound Jonah interpreted as a soft laugh, an alien expression of relief or disbelief. The mother approached Jonah, placing the child in his arms for a moment, a gesture of trust and gratitude he had not expected. "You're kind," she said softly, almost to herself. "Answers when the universe has abandoned us." Jonah felt his chest tighten. He had expected caution, distrust, maybe even punishment. Instead, he felt something larger, acknowledgement. Recognition that courage, compassion, and choice mattered more than protocol or fear. Over the next hours, the aliens examined the child carefully, monitoring vitals and adjusting care. Jonah stayed close, offering advice, guiding their hands, helping them understand what he had done. The mother never left the child's side. Her gratitude was quiet but overwhelming, and Jonah realized that some debts could not be repaid in words alone. They were written in actions, in shared breaths, in moments of trust and hope. When Jonah finally prepared to leave, the mother approached him one last time. Her voice was firm but soft, filled with weight and meaning. "You have changed how my people see humans. You have shown us that life, no matter how small or fragile, is worth risking everything for." Jonah shook his head. "I did what anyone should do," he said, though his voice was weak. "I just answered." The mother's eyes glowed brighter for a moment, a light that radiated warmth. "No, you did not simply answer. You carried the impossible. You crossed the void. You saved hope itself." As Jonah prepared his ship for departure, the alien vessels moved with him, escorting him out of their territory. For the first time, he felt a profound sense of belonging, not to a species, not to a planet, but to the idea that courage and compassion could echo across worlds. The child waved a tiny hand, glowing softly, a gesture Jonah understood in every language. Life had been preserved against impossible odds. A human had shown the universe that one choice could matter more than all orders, rules, or fear. Jonah looked at the stars, endless and indifferent, and smiled faintly. Somewhere out there, in the vastness of space, he had written a small story that would travel further than any report, further than any fleet. He had saved a life, and in doing so, he had reminded the universe that humanity's greatest power was not weapons or technology, but the courage to act when no one else would. The mother's voice whispered through the translator one last time before he left. "We will remember. We will not forget. You are part of our story now." And as Jonah sailed through the void, he realized that hope, fragile, impossible, human, was now something that could ripple across the stars, touching lives he had never imagined, changing worlds he had never seen. When Jonah returned to human space, he did not expect a hero. Welcome. He expected questions, reprimands, maybe even silence. What he received was something far stranger. Attention from every corner of the human communication network, and signals from alien ships he had never imagined would reach this far. The message from the alien mother was clear, broadcast across multiple frequencies and languages. "This is not a plea," her voice said, calm but commanding. "This is gratitude. A human crossed the void, risking himself, and saved life where none dared. We honor him." Jonah stared at the message, his chest tight. He had not done this for recognition. He had not done this for honor or fame. He had done it because it was the right thing. Yet the universe seemed determined to redefine humanity in his image, or at least through his actions. Central Command tried to contact him immediately. Orders, questions, reprimands, they came in a flood. Jonah replied simply, "I answered a call for help, that is all." Social networks, news stations, and human fleets broadcasted his story. A single human, acting without permission, had crossed alien space, defied rules, and saved life. Some called him a hero, others a fool, but every account emphasized the same truth. Humans were capable of courage that was not required, compassion that was not rewarded, and choice that was not dictated by fear. The alien mother's message continued to ripple across the systems. Other species began to respond differently. Where once they had sent demands, threats, and ultimatums, they now sent queries, tests of trust, and gestures of communication. Humans were being seen as unpredictable, yes, but also as beings who could act with honor, empathy, and ingenuity in the face of impossible odds. Jonah returned to his simple life aboard the repair station, exhausted yet content. He resumed fixing old ships and recalibrating worn engines, but the universe around him had shifted. He noticed subtle changes, messages from unknown species requesting minor assistance, trade negotiations that emphasized collaboration rather than fear, even greetings from new explorers who had heard his story. The alien child's life continued to thrive. Reports filtered through from distant worlds, showing the child growing stronger, curious, and resilient. The mother became a leader among her people, often referencing the human who had shown them that hope could be acted upon, that life was worth every risk. Jonah reflected on his choices. Courage was not about facing danger blindly, he realized, nor was it about glory. Courage was about answering a voice when all odds were against you, about choosing empathy when it could cost you everything. Humanity's greatest power, he thought, was not weapons, not technology, but the ability to act rightly when no one else would. He remembered the child's tiny hand glowing in his, the mother's tears of relief, and the way hope had returned in a place where despair had reigned. That memory stayed with him, shaping how he treated every ship, every being, every problem he faced. It was a quiet reminder that one small act could ripple across worlds. Even other humans began to change. Stories of Jonah's bravery inspired them to act differently, small acts of kindness, daring rescues, and choices that valued life above procedure. His simple, human courage had set a standard that could not be measured in orders or laws, only in impact and moral strength. The universe was vast, full of dangers and indifference, yet Jonah knew something profound. Humanity could be a light in the dark. Not a weapon, not a conqueror, but a species that chose to act, to care, and to protect when all seemed lost. One evening, as Jonah looked out at the stars, he saw a faint glow in the distance. A ship moving with purpose, escorted by smaller vessels, traveling toward human space. He knew without confirmation that it was them. The mother and her child returning to thank him in person, to connect two worlds not by fear, but by shared hope and courage. Jonah smiled faintly, a warmth filling his chest. He had done nothing extraordinary, he told himself. Yet the universe had seen his choice, had amplified his small act of compassion, and had shown humanity at its best. Across the stars, across alien worlds, and in the hearts of humans, a new definition of courage and honor was taking root. One human had answered a desperate call, and the echoes of that choice would continue to shape the galaxy for generations. And Jonah, quiet, exhausted, and ordinary in so many ways, realized that sometimes the smallest choices could shine brighter than the stars themselves. Years had passed since Jonah had crossed the void to save a life that the universe had nearly forgotten. Time had changed him, his hair grayer, his hands lined with work, but his heart still carried the memory of that small, glowing child and the mother who had trusted him. The child, now older and strong, had grown into a figure both human and alien in appearance. Their glow pulsed softly with life, no longer fragile but steady, a living symbol of survival and hope. They had learned many languages, but one had become most important, human. It was the language of the one who had given everything without hesitation, the language of courage. Jonah's station received a signal one evening, soft and urgent. When he opened it, he saw the mother and child waiting in a distant system. They had traveled far, bringing greetings from their people. Their ships were smaller now, unarmed, meant for diplomacy rather than intimidation. They came to honor him, but more importantly, to teach the galaxy something profound about humanity. The mother stepped forward first, her presence commanding and calm. Her eyes, once filled with desperation, now radiated strength. The child followed, glowing brighter than Jonah had ever seen, moving with careful confidence. The child stopped before Jonah, small hands glowing faintly as they reached toward him. "You saved me," they said, their voice steady and clear. "Why?" Jonah smiled, a tired but genuine expression. "Because someone once saved me," he said, "and because life is always worth the risk." The child studied him, absorbing every word, every pause, every breath. They did not fully understand the fear, the pain, the exhaustion Jonah had endured, but they understood the meaning. Humanity could choose. Humanity could act. Humanity could give hope when there was none left. The mother's eyes glistened. She spoke to her child in their language, words flowing with a rhythm that Jonah could not translate, but he felt the emotion, pride, relief, and wonder. She turned to Jonah. "Your choice has reshaped our view of life and of humans," she said. "We saw your courage and it changed everything. Not only my child lives, but our people now remember that life is precious beyond all rules." Jonah shook his head humbly. "I only did what anyone should do," he said. "I answered when no one else did." The child placed a glowing hand gently on his chest, eyes meeting his with an intensity that made Jonah catch his breath. "Humans answer when the universe ignores cries for help," they said. "Your kind is more than fear or rules. You are hope. You are courage." Around them, the stars stretched endlessly, indifferent and silent. Yet in that quiet, a new truth had formed. Humanity was not defined by weapons or power, but by the choice to act rightly, by the courage to care when fear could paralyze. Jonah felt tears welling in his eyes. He had never considered himself a hero, yet here, in the presence of a life he had saved, he realized that one person's courage could ripple across worlds, teaching lessons no book or fleet could convey. The child turned to their people, speaking in both their language and human. "This is humanity. They answer. They protect. They choose hope when all seems lost. Remember this." Jonah watched as the alien ships moved in formation around them, carrying the message across their systems. Mothers and fathers, children, leaders, and scholars, all would hear that humanity was capable of more than anyone had expected, more than even humans themselves often realized. The mother leaned close to her child, whispering, and Jonah realized that their lives had intertwined in a bond that went beyond species or distance. A human had crossed the void, and in doing so, had connected hearts across the galaxy. Jonah finally allowed himself to rest beside them. He looked up at the stars, at the vastness that had once seemed cold and indifferent, and smiled. Life had been preserved, courage had been recognized, and hope had returned. The child's glow pulsed steadily as they looked at him again. "We will carry your choice," they said softly. "Through generations, through worlds, through time, humanity will be remembered not for fear, but for the light they bring when all is dark." Jonah's smile widened, faint but certain. The universe was vast, dangerous, and often cruel, but he knew one truth. When a voice cried in the darkness, humans would answer. And that answer, the act of caring, risking, and loving, was a light that no star, no void, no time could ever extinguish. As the alien mother and child prepared to depart, Jonah whispered, "Go, live, and teach the galaxy what it means to be human." The child nodded, glowing bright, ready to carry the lesson forward. Jonah watched their ship disappear among the stars, knowing that one human's courage had sparked a legacy that would never fade. And in that moment, humanity shone, quietly, bravely, and impossibly, in the heart of the universe.